From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here is Jim and Rich.
Off and running on another edition of the Armchair Experts. John DeVita has made the sign of the cross. He's got the priest on speed dial. The award-winning Rich Massaro is here. Wow, you got the big headphones again. You're feeling, no wonder you're smiling. You feeling
I'm
better?
Smiling now. John did that on purpose.
Yeah, he just doesn't want you to have headphone envy anymore.
You better believe it.
Yeah, jeez. So let's see, it's Tuesday. We got a hockey game coming tonight. Hawks have a chance to eliminate the Wild.
We are your hard-hitting, aggressive, insightful reporters here, Jim.
That's right.
So what do you think? Do you think we're going to eliminate the Wild today?
I think it's going to go 7.
I think first goal wins the game tonight.
First goal wins the game tonight?
First goal, team wins scores the first goal, wins.
Well, I think it may go 7, which probably means the Hawks are going to win tonight. I have to take the magic puck out from the 1960-61 Stanley.
You mean the Hawks are going to lose tonight?
I said I'll say the Hawks
goes 7.
I'll say they go 7, which probably will mean, since I've picked it, the Hawks will win tonight.
You know, there's a.
I'm just being ornery.
There's a possibility that the Hawks, depending on what happens, could have home ice through the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah,
So
very possible.
But I mean, we got to win this series first, right?
Yep.
I was glad to see they played Peter Regan. I think it
First
gave him
time.
some fresh legs, and you know what?
Although he was in the penalty box on that first Minnesota goal, so.
Yeah, but he also drew the first Minnesota penalty, which led to our first goal.
Yeah.
I think not quite as scrappy a player as Andrew Shaw, but I think maybe sort of similar in some respects, and I think he gave the team a little bit of boost. Fresh legs, fresh attitude, fresh everything.
Yeah. It wasn't exactly a pretty game.
Who the heck cares about that?
But it was a win, and that's the thing that's the most important.
Never refuse a W.
That's right. Hawks are the favorite tonight.
I've seen a lot uglier wins,
Oh, yeah.
especially being a Chicago sports fan.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
Man, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cubs and Sox, they're specializing in winning. Wasn't that one of our team's mottos at one time? Winning ugly?
Winning ugly.
Wasn't that the Sox or
that was the
something?
83
Sox?
That was the 83 White Sox. And
You
who are
remember-
those? And who are those guys? Who are those guys that were wearing the Cub uniform last night?
Yeah, I heard that they won 17-5. How many who hit home runs? Anybody?
Old hit a home run.
Okay.
Junior Lake drove in 6. I was trying to figure out who these guys were last night.
Yeah, but don't forget that's probably the production for the month.
That took.
John's looking to see if he can.
He has
fresh
coffee.
Brewed coffee.
He has coffee ready.
Hey, whatever happened to Juice Cruz? Speaking of the 83 winning ugly White Sox, wasn't he their second baseman?
He was their second baseman.
And
Julio.
You're supposed to know these things, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Juice
I didn't know.
Cruz, what's he doing? these
I
days?
don't know. Well, that'll be researched.
You know, and you're always telling me about our show prep.
when we meet on Mondays.
I'll be. You know what?
We meet Monday nights for what we laughingly would refer to as show prep.
And then in just a few minutes, folks, I'll be slurping my coffee. So don't mind me. Thanks, John. You are one heck of a great guy.
John, what a great guy.
I'll tell you. How does is this a family trait, John, or is everybody in your family just a great host like you are? I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I tell you, when you're with good people, you are good people.
Oh,
And
This
I'm
is
with
flavored coffee.
Wow.
John. This
and
is
I am
great.
with the best.
oh,
man.
jeez.
And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Oh,
Thanks,
my
John.
gosh.
We
No,
appreciate
I
that. You know, we forgot to say John got an award a couple Monday nights ago too.
That's right.
As well as you.
That's right. John got an
So
award.
What do you tell us? Telling the audience I'm the only award winner for.
Well,
You and John are both
you
award
got a big thing here. I don't know.
I paid a lot of money for that.
I was
award.
going to say that award cost you a bundle.
That did. How the heck do you think you get awards?
John and I just showed up and here, have a clock.
How do you? Yeah, have a clock. And never let it be said that Jim Leon did not report a horse with a clock in its stomach.
That's right. That will be on my conflict. That will be on my conflict of interest statement.
That's right. We don't want, yeah. Oh, boy.
So any other? Let's see. We've got hockey
Any other
tonight.
mania going on?
I don't know. We've got hockey going on tonight. You're thinking the Hawks are going to wrap it up?
No, I said first goal wins.
Oh, first goal wins. Oh,
Yeah.
that's it. All right.
Yeah,
All
don't
right.
be misquoting me now, Jim.
All right, all
I'm
right.
not in the mood to be misquoted
Oh,
today.
excuse me. I don't want to get you in a bad mood.
No,
I-
that happens often enough as it is.
I know you're. I think both
Just
of us.
Mr. Bad Mood here, John.
Just both of us. We're old and we're cranky, and that's just what happens.
Yeah, and we're loving it.
I know.
And loving it.
And loving it. Draft was over. The NFL.
So when are we going to start talking sports?
Oh, I don't know. Should we start now? This is known as vamping. Like, I don't know. What should we talk about today? After
Yeah.
we have all that meticulous show prep last
Yeah,
night.
that's right. It was really meticulous over gelato and whatever.
And you us telling Dana about some of your more interesting comments over the air.
Really. I promise to behave myself today, Jim.
Okay, well,
So,
John,
we'll see.
John's got the priest on speed dial just in case he.
That's right. So, what did you
All
say
right,
about
well,
the draft? Oh, I
draft.
see you have show. You actually did show prep. He's
I
got
al-
color printouts here,
I
John.
always
He
am.
never shares them
prepared.
with me, though.
Well,
He always hogs them.
yeah.
I remember even in school he used to hog stuff.
Well, that's just.
You
the
never
way
could
things-
get to the paper first.
That's right. And remember who was the librarian. I always had to keep track of things,
Yeah.
Thoughts on the draft? I think the pick of Kyle Fuller was not exactly the sexiest pick, but I think it was a really, really good pick. That was a solid pick.
You know what that
I
makes me
think-
wonder about, Jim? It makes me wonder if, because these guys are pros and they're thorough.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, did they look ahead to next year's draft and not see anybody that's a corner, which is a position that they have to address, and not see anybody who's a corner that they really liked, and so decided on Kyle Fuller? Because I would have bet any money that after Aaron Donald was taken, you would have had Pryor or Dix as your number one pick.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about it? You think that the next year's
may-
quarterback crop isn't that good?
They
or?
may have started to scout. And the other possibility that I thought they might have taken would have been Denard from Michigan State.
Well,
And he was still available too. He didn't get taken until 24 by Cincinnati.
I was hoping that they didn't take Pierre Desir from Lindenwood, because it would have been like Back to the Future. Because when they got lucky with the pick of Harlan Hill back in the day, and then they got on this kick for a while of drafting guys from small schools, and other than Harlan Hill, none of them worked out. So I was afraid I was going to see Pierre Desir's name called, and he'd be another small school bust for the Bears.
127th pick in the draft, taken in the 4th round by Cleveland.
Oh, see, I thought he was I thought he was supposed to go higher than that.
No.
Now, what are you saying?
I really think. Well, first of all, I think you're going to see Fuller a lot on the field this year, because I think he's going to fit in well as in the nickel situations as a 5th defensive back. You also have to think Peanut is 34.
Mm-hmm.
Has a propensity for injury.
Well, now, yeah, I think you're going to see probably
I think
Kyle Fuller play a lot.
I think you're going to see him. I think you're going to see him play a lot. I think he is going to, be a future starter.
Mm-hmm.
Most all the experts have given the Bears really a high grade in their draft.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's bad.
yeah.
That probably means the draft was no good.
You see.
When the experts say that, it only counts what we say.
That's right, because we are the armchair experts.
We're the armchair experts.
Well, what would
John's yawning.
John's
He's
yawning.
like, oh, yeah, I've heard this whole shtick before.
I've had enough of these two clowns. Well, what would you grade their draft? I mean, as far as the players taken. I mean, they've addressed certain needs. They were very heavy on the defensive side. with Ego Ferguson. What a great name, Ego Ferguson.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that name. He's kind of viewed as a project. They were
guess.
kind of surprised that they actually took him as the second pick. Is their second pick?
I love the draft, first off, because it just it's I don't know, it's a positive thing. Everybody's upbeat on that particular day.
Everybody's got future. Everybody they draft is going to wind up in Canton.
Well, you know what? Everybody's a good draft pick. And Jim, this is really, when you think about it, the NFL draft back when we were kids used to be a 20-round affair.
Yeah.
And you can name some really low draft picks who turned out to be great players. Bart Starr is the first one that comes to my mind. But even at that, with a 20-round draft, there were
15th.
some greats that weren't even drafted that became Hall of Famers. So, I looked the next day after the draft was completed, and who was the last guy we drafted was an offensive tackle, right?
Charles Leno.
Charles Leno, right. I knew it was the same name as the late-night talk show host. Mm-hmm. But then the next day, it was interesting. We signed some, I don't know, I'm going to say a dozen players or right around there. And you know what? We signed a guard from Wisconsin. I can't remember his name, but we signed, Wisconsin produces, they have those big old fat boy linemen that usually are pretty damn good. Excuse my language. Sorry, Kevin.
John,
that's a bleep.
No, John.
We don't have the 7-second delay either.
Yeah.
And I saw there was a real interesting pick. I believe the kid's name is Jones. He was a linebacker from Florida State. He was a starter in college. I want to say a 3 or 4 year starter. Very good player. They actually had projected him at some experts had projected him to go in the third round. But I think he's had some off the field issues. But I'd be really interested to see a couple of guys like that. Like I say, a big old boy from Wisconsin. They usually produce good offensive linemen, and this kid linebacker from Florida State. And in addition to that, they signed a few other offensive linemen, a couple other linebackers. I think they signed a wide receiver.
They also signed
Jordan Lynch, which I am not too thrilled about the fact that they've already projected him or are going to put him at running back. I'm not a big fan of guys changing positions from college to the pros. I don't think it works out very often. In fact, you may be able to, but I can't think of one case where it actually did pan out really well. I mean, Robin Earl of the Bears went from a fullback to a tight end, and I think he was a fairly good tight end.
While he was in the pros, they tried him as a fullback initially.
Well, he was a fullback.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah, and they changed him to tight end.
Yeah.
And I think that might, but I'm not a big fan of that. I think the guy really, I'm not super hung up on, as you know, analytics or anything, but I do like numbers. And I'm very impressed when a guy has a college career or any career where they put up a ton of numbers because you've been very productive. And I think that says a lot about you as a player. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate to success in the pros. But when you see what Jordan Lynch did as a quarterback, and here's the other thing. Went from Mount Carmel to Northern, and they thought, this guy's a runner. He's going to be a running quarterback. He succeeded Chandler Harnish,
who was also a running quarterback.
Right. And but obviously at Northern, they must have somebody who really teaches well, because both of these guys were successful passers. And I just don't like the idea of moving the guy to running back.
I think it gives him. I think it gives him a rare. I think it gives the Bear a rare opportunity because you've got a guy that you can put some things in the package, and I can see the offensive coordinator and the head coach designing some plays for him.
Is that on the level of Sports Jimmy saying, that the guy they drafted as a punter does, all these reps on the bench press and has a great 40 time? And
that's exactly it. I was going to bring up him next.
And I was going to say, geez, when Bobby Joe Green or Bob Parsons or somebody is punting and they take off and run,
It's only
that's a
in
surprise.
It's only in desperation.
It's in dead, but when this guy takes off and run, they might be waiting for him because they know he could run. But I mean, my big thing is
we've got an option. We've got somebody that they can run an option play.
maybe it's just that as you say, I'm old and crotchety, but I start to get suspicious when they start to sell you something that's one thing, and they start to sell you all the other selling points on it, other than the thing that is supposed to be. So, in other words, when they're selling you a punter who is very strong and can run fast, why are we not talking about how well he could punt? That's I start to get suspicious when we start having conversations like that.
They were talking last night on the radio about they finally got somebody now that can actually, instead of trying to place the ball somewhere, they've got somebody who can just boom the ball away. Now that was meatball.
Well, it's meatball, but I have to say, then I'm in the meatball category because one of the things. Remember when we had that guy that really had the big leg. He went from the Bears to the Chiefs. I can't. John something. This is back probably in
Sauerbrunn.
And here's a guy. When they got him, they touted this guy's got the leg and he can boom the ball. Of course, then when he couldn't pooch it, he got a ton of criticism. My question would be this: it's always been this: if you kick the ball off on the kickoff, okay, and they can't return it, so it comes out to 20, that's a great thing. But when the punter does the same thing, he's a schmuck. Now, you know what? To me, if you could say now, hey, remember a while ago, Jim, we talked about the proposed rules changes where they were going to take the kickoff out of it.
Right.
And our thing was, kicking is very important. Right. Field position is important. But if you're a defensive coach or you're the head coach or you're anybody on the team, if you all told me, now one of the problems with that scenario is where do you put the ball? Okay, is everybody always going to start from the 20? Because if you are the coach or the defensive coach and you told me, man, this team's going to start from the 20 every time it has the ball, I would say all of them would take that scenario in a minute. So why is it a bad thing if the punter booms the ball and it goes out of the end zone and it comes to the 20?
And it comes to the 20. You still got them deep in territory, and they would be happy with it.
Mm-hmm. Now what you got, if you got a guy who really can whack the ball, and now you're starting to make him change his, I don't know what you would call it punting-wise, but it would be similar to a delivery in baseball. So you make him change his style. So now he's trying to, corner kick it or make it die inside the 20. Do you run the risk of now his timing being screwed up, and now he doesn't boom the ball anymore either? I think there's a good possibility of that because in my mind, I'll tell you what, punting is one of the most difficult things to do. Now, you, me, John, we could all get out there with a football and we could kick it. Now, where the heck it would go, I have no idea, but we could kick it.
We could kick it.
But to kick it properly is actually sort of an art form.
To kick it properly when you have 9-10 guys running at you.
Actually, Jim, I'll tell you what, that's a consideration, but I would say this, much tougher than passing.
It is.
Much, much tougher. And I think it's much tougher than place kicking because at least the place kicker, the ball is going to be set and in place if everything's done properly. And it usually is, especially in the pros. But even in the high schools, it's done properly now. But with a punt, I mean, you're dropping the ball. You really have that consideration of the rush. And you know what? The timing on the thing is critical.
Timing is critical. It just made me think. We talk about that any of us can get out there and kick a ball like that, but I said when you've got 9 guys running at you, 10 guys coming at you.
Yeah, that's a little different story.
That's a different story. Just made me think back to days when I was a commissioner of the Chicagoland Football League. One team that was probably one of the worst teams I've ever seen on the field. Their only asset was an incredible punter.
That was a big asset. I'm sure they probably did a little bit better than they normally would do.
Well, we're down before the game watching this kid punt, and he is just booming them away.
Mm-hmm.
And in the course of the game,
How many punts were blocked?
the first time he goes back to punt, I realized that the opponent did not have anybody deep. And I wasn't on the mic, but I said to my friend Arthur, who was doing the scoring, I went, "Oh my God, the Chargers are going to rush 11."
Oh, man.
And they came at him. The line collapsed. He was concentrating. He got the ball. He looked up. He saw 11 guys coming at him with just one back to block. And he did this little shuffle step and tried to get the kick away, and he kicked it right into the up back's rear end.
Oh, boy.
And the ball bounced away. No, actually, I was the public address announcer.
Did he?
That day. And the whole booth exploded in laughter as we watched this. The whole booth exploded in laughter, and I had to unplug the mic and wait because I started to laugh when I saw this. And I had to unplug the microphone, and I waited until everything calmed down, and I plugged it back in, and I said, as a result of the mishandled punt.
Did he quit after that, Jim?
He came off the field. As he was walking off the field, he took his helmet, and he threw it about 20 yards.
Oh, wow.
Which was an immediate fine, and he came up after the game to the booth because I was the commissioner, and he said, "Here, Mr. Leon, here's my fine." And gave me $20.
Did you take it?
I said, "You had a bad day, didn't you?"
Yeah,
he
no
went,
doubt.
"Yeah, I really did."
Hey, Jim, let me ask you this. Have you ever seen, who in your mind is the best pooch guy that you've ever seen? I mean, the best punter for really...
Best punter? I mean, you know.
but I'm talking about a guy who could keep, put on a fairly consistent basis, because that's all it would be. You can't do it totally consistently. But who was the best that you've seen putting it down deep?
I don't know. I kept thinking Brad Maynard.
Brad Maynard was pretty good at it.
Yeah, that's one first name that comes to mind.
Hey, you know what? We were in an interesting conversation, which I've totally forgotten, but I'd like you to refresh my memory. We were
great.
in Fanny and Schmoes yesterday, because we got to mention Fanny and Schmoes no matter when we're on the air.
No matter what, we have to mention Fanny and Schmoes. Stop in, have some baked goods, have a cup of coffee. John's already going, yeah.
He's loving it.
John's ready. John's saying, when's the next remote?
I'll tell you, to show you how good it is, Bill Papish, his wife, Bill took a couple of scones home with him.
Uh-huh.
And his wife sent him over there the next day for more scones, because that's how much they liked them. So I think they were the chocolate chip scones. And they make excellent scones. I'm not a scone expert by any stretch, but everybody that I talk to says they have the best scones that they've ever tasted.
They're fantastic. Now, you wanted me to refresh your memory on the conversation, which
so
now
you actually remembered.
Which now you forgot.
Yeah, well, but because I have a lot of interesting things to say, so
refresh
my memory.
What was the conversation?
I think we were talking about those stupid analytics.
Oh, yeah.
Those wonderfully stupid analytics.
I think at some point in time I'm going to have to break out some of these analytics, and we're going to have to actually debate whether they're beneficial, and I think most of them will not be.
Yeah, well, no,
I think
because you remember we talked a little bit about OPS.
Yeah.
On base percentage plus slugging, right? And that was interesting conversation, because I asked you. I said, Jim, what is OPS? Do you actually take the slugging percentage and on base percentage and add them together? And then you said you take them and you add them and then you divide them by 11? Divide them by number what?
No. You know what the example that we were talking about was a guy had, the simplest example, he had come to bat, what did we figure? He had 4 home runs, or what did he say, 3 home runs?
Oh, he just said he was 4 for 10, 3 singles and a home run, and had actually been at bat 11 times, and there was a walk in there.
Yeah. So his on-base percentage was...
was 5. Well, it's 5 out of 11. For
5 out of 11, whatever that happened to be, and his slugging percentage is 40, total bases divided by at bats. So you add the two together. That's
So-
how it
okay.
was. You just
So-
add the two together. The example that I think I wanted to pull out this week was Chris Bryant is tearing it up right now at Double A in Tennessee. Since last Sunday, and this article was dated May 12th, which was Monday. Over the last week, Bryant, the number 2 pick in last year's Major League Baseball draft, has proved his elite status with Double-A Tennessee. The 22-year-old third baseman is 13 for 28, a .464 average since last Sunday, a span of 7 games with 4 home runs, 14 RBIs, and 12 runs. That stretch included a 2-homer, 6 RBI day on May 7th and 5 multi-hit games. The week-long streak puts Bryant's overall average at .331 and his OPS at 1.061 with 10 homers, 29 RBIs, and 33 runs batted in. In May alone, he's hitting .432 with a 1.295 OPS and 17 RBIs over 11 games. Those are video game numbers.
At one point on the show, I don't know how many shows ago, you asked me of the Cubs prospects who I thought would come, and I don't know if your question was who would make it up first or who would have the most impact first, and my answer was Bryant. And the more I hear about Bryant, the better I like him. And I think, Javi Baez still has a big upside, but, I have to say, I don't know how well. Put it this way, the guys from, say, and I don't know if Javi Baez is from the Dominican or if he's Puerto Rican, but say the guys from the islands, the Hispanic guys, have real benefit, and it's a great thing. They play a lot of baseball, so they are very good baseball players. But I think a guy like Chris Bryant not only has played a lot of baseball, but may have had the benefit of some really good coaching. And I think that's why the more I hear about him, the more I think he'll be the first guy to really make an impact. I'll stick with that, even though Javi Baez is, the last 2 spring trainings, he's been great. I think they really screwed up when they didn't take advantage of the fact that he was super hot and just bring him north with the big club, or east in this case, I guess, since they're in Arizona now. But I just I think Chris Bryant will be the first. I think he'll be a very, very good major league player, if not a star.
Well, I think it's a good idea, really, that they didn't bring Baez up because he's had some terrible struggles at Iowa.
Yeah, but Jim,
he's hitting 151.
I think Iowa. That I'll tell you what, though. I think some of the struggles were created by the big club. The guy had 2 monster springs in a row. I think that there's some disappointment there. Like, what more can I do to make the team? The other thing is, if you're a player and you say, and I'm not saying this happened, but it could. Okay, who's your competition? And you look at yourself, and you're being honest, and you look at the guys who actually are with the big club, and you're saying, why am I not there? I'm better than these guys. I love them. They're my teammates, and I would love them and respect them if I was there with them. But why am I not there? I'm better than Darwin Barney. I'm better than Starlin Castro. I'm better than Louis Valbuena. And you know what? The guy's probably right. So he's probably sitting there like, you know what? If there is such a thing as ruining a player, I think there's more players ruined than there are that are helped by organizations. And the Cubs are experts at ruining players because they have stunk as an organization for years. And you know what? I think they're big contributors because this guy is not, I'm going to say this right now, this guy's not a 150 hitter. He's way better than that. And he's shown that in Double-A. He showed it in the spring. And I'll lay some of this at the Cubs' doorstep. I mean, he may be having his own struggles for sure, but part of this is on the Cubs. I mean, when I looked at Brett Jackson, does he
Vitters?
strike? Vitters. Do those guys strike out a lot? But do those guys have talent? I think they do.
Gary Scott.
And what? Yeah, and look what and you could just name. We had a guy, obviously the one everybody talks about. We had a guy named Lou Brock. If Lou Brock would have stayed with the Cubs, he never would have been a Hall of Famer. They would have ruined him to the point that, if you said Lou Brock's name today, you'd say, "Oh man, that guy, a bum." Mm-hmm. but they send him to an organization that knows how to handle players and people, and he prospered. So
and yeah, it was interesting because when the trade was made, the press in St. Louis gave the Cardinals
a lot of heat, probably.
a lot of heat.
Yeah.
You're giving up one of the best pitchers in the league for what?
Yeah. Did you ever? Well, I know you don't like Halberstam, but when he wrote the, I don't know if it's.
I find him kind of hard to. He's very ponderous when I.
He wrote a book about the '64 Cardinals and Yankees.
Yeah.
And he starts out talking about Brock, and when Brock got to St. Louis, who was the manager? Was it Johnny Keane?
Johnny Keane.
Johnny Keane.
Yeah.
And he said, "You know what? We don't want you to. We're not going to tell you anything. Okay? We're going to put you in. I think they put him in left field. I don't think they put him in right field right off the bat. So I think it was left field. And he had been a right fielder with the Cubs. They put him in left. They said, we're going to lead you off, and we're not going to tell you anything. You just do what you do. Swing at the pitches you like. Take a walk if you like. Whatever. I mean, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is the idea.
It's we're going to leave you alone.
We're just going to leave you alone.
Right.
And that's what they did. And we're going to a break, John? Okay.
All right. Take a break. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Armchair Experts on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center. And now, back to Jim and Rich and Armchair Experts.
All right, we broke the station. John put it back together, and let's continue.
Yeah, there is such a thing as over coaching, and do you remember? And I think I've told you this story, but I don't think I told this story on the air. Years ago, the New England Patriots had a great tight end by the name of Russ Francis, who was from I don't know if he was from one of the Oregon schools, State or the Ducks, and in addition to being a great football player, he was an Olympic class javelin thrower. He was throwing the javelin over 200 feet, which was Olympic category. Had a chance to go to the Olympics. And he had a coach, and you know what? Every coach is well-meaning. And I'm not saying most players, especially if they're young, they need some coaching. But you also have to know when to keep your hands off. Well, this coach said, you know what, man, we can lengthen that throw out a little bit more, and started to work with Francis. Well, it had the totally opposite effect, to the point where instead of throwing the thing over 200 feet, now he could throw it like 180 tops. And he never could get the form back that he had used to throw the thing over 200 feet. And it totally, he hurt his arm doing it, so that, he had a sore arm, which comes into play of obviously you're throwing the thing. Never regained his form. He didn't blame the coach. He understood the coach meant well. But you know what? The coach basically, with good intentions, ruined this guy's chances to be in the Olympics. And that stuff happens. It happens. You look at NFL quarterbacks, you look at guys who are drafted in the NFL. Every one of those guys is a good quarterback. But you listen to a guy like Jaws, Ron Jaworski, who will get super technical. Like this guy, the guy could be throwing the darn thing 60 yards down the field. Well, he throws off his back foot. Yeah, he throws off his back foot, but he throws farther than
anybody else.
Yeah. So who cares if he throws? If I'm a coach and I see a guy and he's lighting it up in whatever category, hey, let him light it up. How am I going to improve this guy?
Hasn't Peyton Manning had a reputation for really a good part of his career for throwing those ruptured ducks?
Hey, here's the other thing, Jim.
I think
you're
he
making
did pretty
a great
well.
point.
I think he did pretty well over the years.
Well, the kid that they just drafted, the Bears I'm talking about, Fales. Okay,
signed him, by the way.
I read a little bit about him. Not much. There wasn't much to read. And they said the experts in the paper, just like us, the armchair experts, doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's very accurate. Well, to me, I'd say this. Bobby Douglas had the strongest arm I ever saw, but he was far from accurate. If he had been accurate, he probably would have been a great quarterback. But
Some throw past 70 yards into the wind with a broken arm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But what I would say, and I'm trying to connect the dots here with your comment about Peyton Manning, is I'm not saying Fales would be a Peyton Manning, but when you see a guy who say, okay, the arm strength's not what whoever you want to compare him to is, but he's accurate, and you take a guy like Manning, who he's not a super strong arm, but I guess the point I would make, he knows when to throw it, he knows when that little opening is there, and he's accurate with it, and that is critical. You could have the greatest arm in the world. You look at a guy like Jay Cutler, and one of the biggest knocks on Cutler is he starts to gunsling it. He thinks that his arm, because
his arm is going to get him out of all his problems.
Exactly, and
right.
It can't.
It can't. By the way, I just you couldn't think of the name of the guard that they signed from Wisconsin. Ryan Groy was his name.
And I'm not saying that he's going to be, I'm not even going to say he's making the team, but I'm saying if you're going to sign guys, free agent style guys, sign a guy from a major university, and especially a university that is well known for producing good linemen. Okay, and you can. I know people then say, well, what about what's his name that we had as our first round draft choice that didn't make it? Well, whatever. You're going to have busts, but But basically, that would be, I would say, and you'll love this, and Dana will love it, her being a Michigan State grad. You're going to sign a guy who's very athletic. Sign a guy from MSU. They have 9 times out of 10, they have great athletes. Okay, so if you're going to roll the dice on a guy who's a great athlete, whatever position, get a Michigan State guy.
Especially with the recruiting philosophy now and over the last few years, and they're really seeing it coming to fruition that Mark D'Antonio has always followed.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't necessarily go for those 5-star recruits, but you got a team of 2, 3, and 4-star recruits, and has incredible depth.
You've got
a defensive coordinator who is one of these days is going to be an outstanding head coach somewhere. Pat. The name escaped me.
Okay.
But, if you're looking for a talented athlete, an athlete, really, on the defensive side, you would always look to Michigan State.
Yeah, definitely. I would say.
Just like you said, you were talking about looking for good linemen. Well, Wisconsin has a tradition of producing good linemen.
So does
Nebraska.
Nebraska, Michigan,
Wisconsin too, yeah.
Yes, they're going to, yeah. Now, would you say, now the interesting thing when we talked yesterday, I had read an article, and I mentioned this to you, and I'm thinking about producing good players again. There was an article about your favorite guy, Clinton Dix, in the USA Sports Weekly.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I had mentioned to you that. Yeah, and
I found that your comment interesting. Go ahead.
A lot of times, the analysts, the professional, your Mel Kipers and your other guys like that, are sort of meatball-y. But you know what? Sometimes they'll take something and it has a real ring of truth to it. And they mentioned in this article that one of the concerns, let's say not knocks, but concerns, say with Dix, is that he may have reached his ceiling as a player. And they mentioned 3 or 4 other defensive backs that have been drafted off of Saban teams, all within the last, say, 3-4 years. And they're not saying that the guys are bad players, but they're saying there's no growth because they felt that they're so well coached in college that they've hit their ceiling, okay? So where maybe, and I'll just say, maybe a guy like Vereen, who the Bears drafted, or Pryor from Louisville, have maybe a little bit. They're thinking it's not that there's nothing exact about this, but they're thinking maybe guys like that will have more of an upside. Maybe Dix, not to say he's going to be bad, but when he gets there, he may not get better. And I think there's some. I liked that thought. In a lot of respects, I think there's some truth to it.
I was going to say, isn't the objective don't you think the objective is when they come out of college certainly at a high-level university like Alabama and that, wouldn't you expect them to be professionally ready?
Well, now there's where you could turn the argument on its head and say it is a little bit meatbally, because you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things I think I mentioned to you and John before, I remember a few years ago, I'm at home prior to the NBA draft, and I'm watching a draft analysis, and to make a long story short, as they're going over the 20 top players, they'll say, great athlete, but has to improve the mid-range jumper, has to improve his rebounding skills, have to do that. And I'm thinking, well, how is he a top 20 draft pick then? He doesn't have a great shot. He's not a great rebounder. All he is a great athlete. So, you're making a good point.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you could flip the coin on that argument and say, well, yeah, that's the way you're supposed to come out.
That's because the comment, even though the comment certainly on Ego Ferguson when he was taken by the Bears was, here's a guy with, they took him earlier than they expected. He was only a one-year starter. He's a project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's a project.
Well,
yeah.
Then, what'd you take him in the second round for? Was there better athletes out there?
Did they take him in the second or the third?
No, they took him in the second round. No.
Sutton was still there in the third?
Yeah, they took him in the second round.
Okay.
Sutton, I think Sutton was more of the surprise that he was available in the third round.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've lost my list. Talk amongst yourselves while I find this.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I guess the thing I liked about one of the comments that I saw about Ferguson.
Sutton was in the third round. Yeah.
So go ahead, Jim.
No,
I
go
think
ahead.
you had
That's
a thought. The thing I like to hear about, and I think I mentioned this to you, about Ferguson and Sutton, is they're big guys. And what I'm thinking about in my own mind, I know that they're going to change John Bostic to an outside linebacker, but I think with his abilities, or what little I've seen of them on film and whatnot, what little film I've seen of him, I'm thinking he's still a middle linebacker. And I'm thinking that if those two guys pan out and they're big bodies, you can go back to that year when we had the two big horses in front of Urlacher, where he just roamed around and did his thing and had a great year. And if Ferguson and Sutton could turn out just to be those line cloggers like that, and let a guy like Bostic just roll him and do his thing, I think that would be a great scenario. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to turn out that way, but I'd like to see that. Mm-hmm. I know that when I read recently a book about the 70s Steelers, and Jack Lambert is sort of a quiet guy. He's an odd type of guy, and you didn't get much interviewing from him. Most of those guys, a lot of those guys are still alive. But one of the things you did get is that with Joe Green, and I guess it would have been Dwight White, those two big guys really gave him a free hand to roam around and just create a lot of havoc. So I think that's a great, if those two guys pan out, that'd be a great scenario for the Bears.
There was one thought that just kind of came into my mind, and I saw an article last night online. When the owner of Cleveland, the Browns, has basically told Johnny Manziel, come into camp with the attitude that you're the backup.
The backup, huh?
Yeah.
I don't like that.
You're going to have to earn it. And he said, yeah, his ego was bruised that he was number 22. Mm-hmm. He was selected number 22. Mm-hmm. And apparently that's come across. And I saw another quote that online that was very interesting. Me being the social media type and on Facebook, since you view Facebook as the devil's tool.
Yeah, well, I'm on it, but I don't use it.
Yeah, Hines Ward. He's an interesting guy to follow because he'll put some interesting quotes up now and then. And he put up a quote that said, "It doesn't matter where you were drafted."
I agree with that.
You've got the opportunity. You've got the opportunity that so many never get. Take advantage of it.
See, there's two things here, though. First off, I don't believe that Johnny Manziel. To me, he's a cocky guy, and I think he's a good cocky, and I don't think that's really hurting him much. He might say that just to say it. But the other thing is, normally I'd say, competition is good. But, where I don't think competition is great because it creates confusion. Yeah, you ever read Paper Lion?
Yeah.
Okay, one of the big problems that team had, and it was a team with great players, was there was a
We're talking the Detroit Lions in the early 60s.
In the early 60s. Milt Plum and Jim Nanowski were the quarterbacks, and there was a lot of controversy in the locker room about who should be the quarterback. And I think when you start to get that situation, it's not good. So I think it's always better, at least at that position, to say, Johnny Manziel, you're coming in, and you're number one from the get-go. And I think the other thing, if the guy he was going to compete with was... well,
in this case, it's Brian Hoyer, which doesn't exactly...
they signed Vince Young.
Released him.
Oh, they released him. Okay.
Yeah, they released him.
All right, that's a little different situation. If it would have been Vince Young, I would have said then that's a... I just don't think that would have been a healthy situation, because then you have a black-white thing also potentially come into it. Not say it would come into it. And no, I would just say, Johnny Manziel, that you're the guy that we drafted in the first round, regardless of which pick it was, and this franchise needs something, a shot in the arm, and you're going to be it, and give them all the confidence that you can give them, and just let them go out there and play football and do it.
I also wonder, in this case, is who's the owner? Hazlitt, right? Hazlitt?
I have no idea.
Haslam or Haslam?
Haslam might be the owner.
Haslam might be the owner. Maybe he's finally coming to the realization that said, I've got a new coach. This is 3 coaches in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Let my coach make his choice, and not force it and say, here's our savior.
Well, hopefully the coach was on board with the pick, though. I mean, because if he's not, then you've created another problem anyway. Because you're saying, if your scenario is right, let the coach do the picking, but then you've picked a guy who's, obviously a high profile guy, and now you're going to let the coach deal with this situation. You've created a problem for your coach. So I'm not. I don't know where Cleveland is screwed up. That's all you can say. That's it's worse than it's probably as bad as the Cubs are in baseball here. So
I don't know if
good luck to Johnny Manziel.
I don't know if anybody can be as bad as the Cubs are here. You brought up something on coaching, and you and I have talked about this a couple of times over coffee, and I think I wanted to kind of get into it and see where we go today with it in the time we have left. We've talked about coaching, and we've talked a lot lately, especially talking about the Ridgewood football program.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of brought up the idea of travel teams.
Okay.
And I mean, we see travel teams in baseball. We see travel teams in hockey. Well, hockey, that was a common thing. You don't see a Little League hockey program anywhere. The Junior Rebels, can that be defined as a travel team?
Yeah, I mean they travel. They go to they're in a league and they play away games, and so yeah.
I think
two
things here. How effective are those programs? And what does that do as far as the interest in a particular sport for kids?
Well, I'll
thinking back to the days when we were young, back there when Abner Doubleday invented the game, and we were outside every day playing it.
Well, first off, what you're saying
talking
there,
baseball, obviously.
What you're saying there is the, in my opinion, the most important thing. It's why do you see? And I'm not going to go too far afield with this. I'll get to your question for sure. But why do you see so many say, Dominican players, a small country that make the major leagues. Now even Cuba, another small country, more guys in the major leagues. Puerto Rico, same thing. Because the kids are constantly playing, so they develop their skills. They're better. So now back to your question. Is a travel teams need to be done today because it's keeping up with the Joneses. The problem for, say, a school like Ridgewood, though, the more I've thought about this, and I will say this, I was a guy who pushed big time for, the Junior Rebels to be formed. But the more I've thought about it, the more I'm thinking for a small school like Ridgewood, it's going to probably hurt you as much as help you. So it's a wash. If you're Maine South and you have the Junior Hawks, I've heard people say if you go by South Park in the fall at 6 o'clock in the evening, you'll see 100 or so little Junior Hawks out there for football practice. So say 40 of those little Hawks get discouraged and don't play football beyond that point, you still have 60 guys, and it's not going to be 40. It's going to be maybe 20 or 30. Now you got 70 guys coming into school ready to play on top of other classes. So you probably have, I bet you Maine South's got 120 kids, I'll say conservatively, because it might be more than that, in their program, all levels. If you lose a third of those kids, you still got 80. So, you take those numbers for Ridgewood, and now you say maybe there's 40 in the Junior Rebels, and you're going to lose 10. So now you're down to 30, and over the course of their life in the program, you're going to lose another, let's be conservative and say 5 or 6. Now you're down to 25. So how is that travel ball helping you? Because you're going to have, the reason you're going to lose kids from 8th grade to high school in both scenarios is you're going to have certain kids who are on that team who are not playing much even at that level. So they're going to say, well, hey, once I get to high school, there was even more guys. So why am I even doing this? So you're going to lose a certain percentage right off the bat. And I think for a big program, it's fine. For a small program, I think it's very iffy. I think the jury's out on it. What I'd rather see, and I know it was the thing they tried to do with Ridgewood and the NYA, Norwich Youth Activities, is try to have a combination of the NYA and the Junior Rebels, so that you could keep the kids who are just trying football out, in NYA.
Keep them interested in the program.
Keep them interested.
In the sport, rather.
And I'm all for competition, but I think, especially if, say, it's a sport like football, which is a tough sport. You're going to get banged around. Not everybody likes that. So I think you need to get as many people at least to try it as possible, because it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea right from the get-go. So the Little League scenario gives you that bigger group of people. And the bad thing about Little League, although it's not a given even for a travel team, is you might get good coaching, you might get poor coaching. The coaching is iffy. But at least the kids are playing. And that's the big thing. But I really, I'm not a... If I was running the world, I'll do a little Jimmy Sunshine, I don't think I would. I'm not a big travel football or travel baseball guy. I'd say let everybody play Little League. I'd like to see maybe if there was a way to improve the coaching in Little League. We have the benefit, I think, when we were kids, of having a lot of guys who were World War II vets, played a lot of ball as kids, because back then you didn't have TV.
Right.
All you had was radio, so you were out playing ball.
Right.
And those guys learned how to play the game. So when you were taught by those guys as Little League coaches, it wasn't universal, but you probably got somebody who knew the game fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's not the same thing. But I still like the Little League concept just a little bit better, because it gets more kids involved.
When you got involved, and when you said you pushed for the Junior Rebels. What was the idea behind? What was your idea behind that? Just to provide a steadier flow of talent up to Ridgewood.
Yeah, I think what it was is that kids who were going to be committed to playing for Ridgewood, that was the thought that was foremost in my mind. But as I say, the more I've thought about it as the years have gone by, the more drawbacks I saw to it. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think we're going down that path. I think the problem that we'll have, too, is, again, you don't have that large pool of kids. So you really need to get some really young kids started, okay, and keep those kids going. Say if they start in 4th grade. You need those kids you need to keep them going all the way through 8th grade. And a lot of things can happen in a travel situation, I think, from 4th through 8th grade that can be negatives. You know what? If you don't have a winning team, people will get discouraged. If you come up with a bummer coach, people will get discouraged. The price tag on travel football is way bigger than Little League football. In Little League, okay, if you have a losing season or you're with a bad team, you might lose kids. That's true. But your parents are paying a hell of a lot less money. Excuse my language again. And
John crossed himself.
So,
he's all right.
I said I was going to be good today.
And he's made the sign of the cross, so you've been forgiven.
But I just think that I just think you have a better chance of capturing those kids and keeping them through Little League.
What can you do about the coaching? I mean, if what can you say to get some consistency in coaching? Do you think if you're going to have a program like this, you have to have some sort of training for coaches? Something that the coaches have to go through to get some consistency. You've got guys walking around. I see guys walking around with kids' football looking like they think they're Bill Belichick on the sidelines.
You know what? What I found in our situation is, and I think it's unfortunate. I think the guys who really had some good background in football, a lot of them really didn't have the time because they had other things going on, families or businesses or whatever. And unfortunately, the guys who had the time, I don't think, in my opinion, they were good guys. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying they didn't know any football. But the way I see Ridgewood football, I don't think they taught football the way I would like to see it taught. So that I think becomes a problem. It's and
when you say they didn't teach it the way you would like to see it taught, how would you like to see it?
Well, Ridgewood is always going to be really the only way we can succeed is to be physical and aggressive. I'll tell you what, I think Chris Zach is a wonderful offensive mind, and I see this. He does a lot of good things with his team offensively. But what football always gets back to for me, and I think one of the reasons that Ridgewood was successful is it's a physical game, and especially your linemen have to be guys who like to hit and be physical. And if you're spending too much time on the X's and O's and not enough time on the physical part of it, developing hard-nosed people, then I think you just have a glorified flag football team. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to win you. If you're going to count on outscoring teams, you're going to outscore some, but you're not going to outscore them all. Do you remember the game, Jim, when RB made it down, I think, to the state finals? I want to say this was, probably within the last 10 years. And they ended up playing Joliet Catholic, and they had a shootout with them. Now, Joliet Catholic, you're not thinking as a shootout team.
No, you're thinking of them as just a real defensive-minded team.
But RB was able to move on them, and the score was huge. Okay, it would have been like, I think the final was in like 60s to 50s something, or 70s to 60s,
I remember
or
that.
Whatever.
And however, and it was overtime too, if I remember, wasn't it?
I'm not sure if it was overtime, but the problem is, RB could move the ball on Joliet Catholic. Their offense worked, but because they didn't have the physicality because of that offense. Their strength, their great strength was their great weakness, because they never, probably in practice, your defense is playing against your offense.
Right.
Your offense is geared to, they're a spread offense. Now at Joliet Catholic, even though they don't have your offense, they're going through your defense like paper with their running game, and you can't stop them. So it's just as good as a passing game. 1 or 2 plays, and boom, they're scoring.
They've scored.
So it's to me, I think it's a dangerous game you play when you're depending on your offense to carry the load for you. I just think, look what happened with the Broncos in the Super Bowl. It's a classic example. I mean, I would have been the first to say, oh man, Broncos had a great year. Psst, they're hot, they're on fire. Well, guess what? Seattle was physical as could be, and they destroyed them.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's what I mean. You have to have that physical aspect, and that's really the guts of your team there.
All right. Interesting. I wanted to. It was good. I was trying to get an idea where we could go with that one, especially with the issue of coaching and travel teams, and that was good.
It's a great topic.
Good. Well, looks like we're coming up on the end of another get-together. Right, John? Yeah.
Oh,
John
yeah,
said,
John says that's it.
That's
you guys
it.
are done. You've been drinking my coffee and yakking away.
You've been drinking my coffee. It's obvious when you're asking me how much time is left. You have nothing more to talk about. So I'm going to turn the music on, and you two guys can get out of here.
Jim, great show.
Good show, man. Hey, a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Thanks for letting us come and hang out. We'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. It was edited by Stephen Lehman. Our audio engineer is James Rohde. And the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, May the 13th, the year 2014. Be safe, and thanks for listening.